Today we're discussing section 1-3, day 1 graphing step functions. So step function is a function which pairs every input on an interval with the same output value. So the graph looks like the steps of a staircase, which means we're going to have these like horizontal lines increasing over time or over our x values. And so we're going to look at two different functions that create a step function. The greatest integer function, which tells us to round any number down to the nearest integer. So notice that that is where the variable is surrounded by brackets or brackets with the top missing. So since it just has the bottom bracket, that's kind of a visual cue that you're rounding the number down. And then the rounding up function is the opposite of that, where it's the brackets but with just the bottom part missing. So the top part is cueing you to round the value up. One thing to note is that if I'm evaluating either of these two functions at an integer, my answer is that integer. So as an example, if I'm rounding -1 down, my answer is -1. If I'm rounding -1 up, my answer is -1. And so since that function value is an integer, when I'm rounding it, it is the closest integer below the number or above the number. And so we're going to look at first example 1 where we are rounding some decimal values either up or down according to the function. So for part A, we have 5.89. Notice that visually they're asking us to round it down. And then for B, we're also looking at 5.89, but we're rounding it up. And then for C, that's different notation, but it still means to round the function down. And so what I want you to think about is a number line. And so if I look at the number 5.89 on the number line, that's about here. If the problem is asking me to round a number down, I'm going to go to the nearest integer below that number, which in this case is 5. So 5.89 rounded down is the number 5. So my answer for A and for C is 5, versus if I'm rounding that number up, so what the notation in problem B is asking me to do, my answer is going to be 6. Okay, so 5.89, we can see rounded down is 5, rounded up is 6. For part D, I have a negative number, -0.44. And so -0.44 is somewhere between -4 and -5. And so notation-wise, this is asking us to round the number down. So I'm rounding -4.4 down. And so the nearest integer down, so to the left, is -5. So the answer for this problem is -5. Okay, so again, down I'm going to the left, up I'm going to the right. Notice the next two problems have the same brackets, so all of these are rounding down. So for part E, I'm looking at the number 3.2. So if I look at the number 3.2 on the number line, that's going to be somewhere about here. And so since this is telling me to round that number down, 3.2, the closest integer on the left, is the number 3. And then finally, for part F, we're asked to round -1.3 down. So -1.3 is about here. Again, the brackets tell us to round that number down, which means to the left. So that's going to give us an answer of -2. Okay, so that's looking at the greatest integer function and the rounding up function.